triggering for my ADD. Good evening, everybody. We're going to get rolling here pretty quickly. I did intentionally let you in at 6:01, even though I'm sure there's still going to be some stragglers, because it has become apparent that many of you think we are fashionably late every single tasting. So I'm going to try to mix it up a little bit and maybe we'll start one a minute early, just for kicks. You never know. Anyway, hope you're having a great Friday wherever you are. We're going to get rolling in a couple of minutes, but as I said, because this is a slightly earlier than normal tasting, I know there's still some people trickling in. So if you'll indulge me quickly, I'm just going to share what most of you probably already know, but give you a little reminder anyway. Tuesday next week, we've got Maurice Chevalier from Old Pulteney. He's going to be doing a vertical tasting for us. This is a crazy lineup. If you didn't do the tasting where we poured the Old Pulteney, you can't call it Old Pulteney if it's an IB, the Pulteney 1982 from G&M, it is stunning. I mean, I wanted to try the Pulteney 25, but the main reason we did this tasting was because I wanted to have another dram of that Pulteney 82. So you might want to check that one out. There's also spots open for our Scotch Malt Whiskey Society virtual outturn tasting on Wednesday. Why should you attend that tasting? Good question. There's a closed distillery bottling in it, which is not something we get very often from the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society. So you may want to check that out. Evan will be on that, maybe Harmony, maybe me, maybe some other people, I don't know, but it'll be a good tasting. There's also spots for the in-store at 6 p.m. if you'd rather do that. And this is the other one. I won't go further than this, but the Benrinnes tasting a week Tuesday with Richard Urquhart is kind of built around our Benrinnes 2002 cask, which I am calling the poor man's Brora. And if you don't know what Brora is, look it up. Look up Brora 25, and that's basically what that Benrinnes 2002 cask is. So lots of cool things coming down the pipeline. The other thing is, if you're mulling it and you have yet to purchase a whiskey calendar, the whiskey calendars, they're in production. Harmony's been busy with the new guy, Jordan in particular. They've been filling bottles for the whiskey calendars. So those are coming, probably be ready at the end of October. But we got to wait for our labels and our boxes. But production is in progress. And this year's regular whiskey calendar is more than half sold out at this point in time. So if you want one, just saying. And it's like 5 tastings. That's basically how we sell it. It's 5 tastings. We're going to do 5 tastings with it. You can take part or not. You don't have to. But regardless, that's what's coming down the pipeline. Tonight's tasting, really excited about it. I've been a huge fan of Adelphi for a long time. Big fans of what they do. And I'm especially a big fan of Ardnamurchan. I think of the 30 odd new distilleries that have opened in Scotland, it is among the 5 or so that I think are the most interesting and that have the most, not just compelling story, but spirit, like one of the better spirits. So we are lucky to be joined tonight by Carl Crafts, who is the sales executive for Adelphi Distillery, which means Adelphi, the independent bottling, but also Ardnamurchan. And he kindly agreed to stay up late with us. It is after 1 a.m. where you are, Carl. Thanks for joining us tonight. And you are muted. See if that'll. Oh, I didn't make you a co-host yet. There we go. Now you're co-host. You can mute and unmute at will.
It wasn't letting me unmute there for a second. So a roaring start. So hi everyone. Thanks for having me. Thanks Andrew. Thanks Harmony. Thanks to your whole team. Also, I should say a quick thanks to Marlene, who's on the call, and to Onyx
and Spencer and Onyx Beverage. So yeah, them as well.
Who represent us in the province. So nice to see some friendly faces here. And hi to everyone who I haven't met. Thanks for the introduction, Andrew. It's really great to be here. So yeah, as Andrew mentioned, I'm on the sales team with Ardnamurchan and Adelphi. So we are co-owned. I suppose you could call Adelphi the parent company, and we'll get to them kind of in the latter half, but I'm happy to answer any questions about how this all fits together. But yeah, we're a small independent company. So I'm one of 6 on the sales /marketing /blending / do whatever is asked that hour, that day, team.
Harmony, does that sound familiar with a business you work at? Yeah. Sorry, Carl.
No, all good. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. We have, I mean, thanks to Andrew and the team, a pretty remarkable set of drams here for you this evening, a nice Friday evening set. So I think probably without further ado, I guess I'll start by saying we're pretty casual. We like to have fun, and we like to lead with whiskey. So I'm going to do that, and we'll talk about the first dram straight away. And then while you're drinking it, I'll give you a little bit of background about Ardnamurchan, and lead that into Adelphi eventually. But just to say we're open books, so please pop questions into the chat. I should say I'm 4 months into the job, so I will do my absolute best. But if I can't answer, you can direct message me, and I will find the answer and get it to you. But we have nothing to hide, and you'll learn a little bit more about that, and sort of transparency being a big thing that's important to us. But let's do whiskey. Let's live with whiskey. So dram one, I'm going to guess that at least some, if not the majority of you on the call here have maybe tried this. I hope so. And I hope you like it. So this is our single malt. This is our AD single malt, our core expression. So I'll get into the nuts and bolts, and then again I'll go back and we'll talk about the distillery in some detail. That way you have an excuse. You probably didn't need it to enjoy the whiskey while I'm talking at you, but that way we've got it there. So our single malt is 46.8% bottling strength. It is, as with every single product that comes out of our distillery, it is non-chill filtered and natural color. In terms of distillate, the bottle effectively reflects how we operate our distillery in a calendar year. So we do about 6 months of unpeated distillate and 6 months of peated distillate. And as a result, this is 50% peated, 50% unpeated. So what we're doing there, Andrew, before you all joined, we were talking about it a little bit, and he's absolutely right. Ardnamurchan is in the Western Highlands, and I'll show you exactly how far into the Western Highlands here in just a moment. But we're looking to make kind of an old school Western Highland malt. So we want smoke to be there. It's important that smoke and peat character is there as part of the whiskey, but we also don't want it to be the entire whiskey, right? We're not on Islay. Islay is very good at what they do, and we don't need to mess with that. So we also use Highland peat, which is another distinguishing difference there. But we want that peat to be there, but we hope that there's fruit. We hope that there's something that's really big for us when we're tasting and blending the core is there a salinity, a saltiness. Now, the term maritime we could talk about for the entirety of this tasting, but it's something that, you know, we like to try to find in the whiskey, and we think that it's part of the DNA. So anyway, we're looking for a balanced dram. And then very quickly, maturation wise, we do 2/3 bourbon and 1/3 ex-sherry. So all of our bourbon barrels come from Old Forester, from Brown-Forman. So we have a direct relationship with them. We have barrels from all the usual suspects, you know, Jim, Makers, Woodford, etc. But in terms of consistency and how it was working with our spirit, we really liked back. This is now going on 7 years of Old Forester relationship. Really liked what it was doing with our spirit. So we have a pretty steady supply of Old Forester barrels. Sherry wise, we use 2 bodegas in Jerez in southern Spain. One is Miguel Martin, who is sort of the godfather of sherry maturation. So he also does the cask for the biggest names in sherry maturation, Macallan, Springbank, Glenfarclas, to name a few. So we're very fortunate to work with Miguel. And then also a family bodega called Jimenez Spinola, and they use exclusively Pedro Jimenez or PX grapes. So that is a kind of a cool additional relationship that we have for our sherry maturation. That's effectively our core. So as I said, 46.8, we're just looking to make that balance Western Highlands single malt and establish a DNA for our distillery, which is now has 9-year whiskey in cask, which is exciting. It's tasting pretty good and double digits next year. So that's the core. I think from there, I will just jump into just a very quick presentation to give you all a sense of where the distillery is. As I mentioned, we're 9 years. So we were founded in 2013. The first distillate ran in 2014. And the Ardnamurchan Peninsula is way up on the West Coast. So let me just get this rolling quickly. And I am conscious of time, but I will see what I can do here. Cool. Can we all see that? Nods? Sweet. Amazing. So we'll go full screen. So this is our distillery. So that body of water that you see just across the road is Loch Sooner, which is a coastal or a sea loch. So if you were to hop in a boat and hang a right, you would get out into the Sound of Mull and then eventually the Atlantic and then eventually Canada. So another part of Canada, but Canada nonetheless. To give you all, and just so you know from this picture, there are 2 more warehouses now kind of right at the bottom of the screen here. So we are expanding, and I'll touch on that here in just a second. This is just a little map to give you a sense of exactly how far away we are from quite literally almost anything. So we say it's a 4-hour drive from anywhere. So it's about 4 hours from Glasgow, about 4 hours from Edinburgh, maybe 3 and change from Speyside up here. So just not easy to get to. If you go to the end of the, sorry.
I was gonna say it's a fun drive though.
It's a gorgeous drive. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a stunning part of Scotland, and as such, I would say a stunning part of the world, and something that we don't want to ruin by having a distillery there. And that gets to kind of what I'm leading into. So a brilliant segue. Thanks, Andrew. That's well done. This just gives you a little taste of that natural beauty. So that's the Ardnamurchan Lighthouse, which is at the end of our road. And that is the westernmost point on the British mainland. So you really can't get much further removed than where we are. And as a result, actually, I'll see, Andrew, if you don't think this is going to work, but this is a little video. Can people see this?
Yep.
The dramatic music. It's short, I promise.
I don't think the music's coming through, at least not for me.
That might be fine. If the video goes, that's cool. So this just gives you all a sense of where our distillery is situated. And the way we like to put it is, if you build a distillery in 2013, the place as beautiful as this, you're kind of missing the trick if you don't make it with sustainability in mind. So we lead with whiskey. There's the distillery there. We lead with whiskey. The liquid is the most important thing, but we also try to make it in as responsible a way as we possibly can. And I'm going to touch on that just as this pans back out to that initial shot that you saw. I think that's probably the end. Yeah, so that's Ardnamurchan. That gives you a sense of what the name is. That's the peninsula. Cool. Oh, don't start again on me. There we go. So this is just a quote from Alex, from our managing director. So the term circular economy is maybe one that really pertains to how we operate. So we have, I think it's 168 solar panels on our warehouse roofs. And then we also have hydroelectric power from the same river that provides our cooling water and water for production. So between those 2 sources, in terms of electricity, we could very, very much go off grid. It was a genuine decision that was made for the business not to, because there are some pretty serious storms on the west coast of Scotland, and we want to make sure that we can keep producing whiskey if the worst happens. But we often feed more into the grid than we take out on any given day. So that's, again, those are our stills. The water feeding into production. Barley, I'll touch on very quickly. This is something that we probably don't talk about enough. We use 100% Scottish barley, and that number is now actually close to 70% is grown on the farms that surround the Adelphi headquarters, which are the family farms of our managing director of Alex. And that includes several varietals that we rotate through, responsibly grown through a local farming scheme to make sure that it's done ethically and with health in mind. And then this is maybe the biggest thing. So we have a biomass boiler. So there's no oil on site at the distillery at all. We use wood chip from about 2 miles down the road. And there's a guy named Huey who drives a tractor with a whole bunch of wood chip that gets basically dumped into a pot. And that's what fuels our whole distillery. And that is renewable forestry. So we're replanting as we take. It's not perfect, right? Cutting down trees is not perfect. We get that, but it's a lot better than oil. And then we do a lot of the things on the back end that some other distilleries do, using reed beds for the liquid byproducts, and then physical byproducts all goes to the local livestock as well. And this just gives you a little bit of sense of size. So we're operating at just shy of 400,000 liters. And we have close to 18,000 casks at this point, 9 years in, which is exciting. We have some stock to work with. So all good things. A little bit about the bottle, and I think I'll probably leave it there. I think that's enough so we can get on to whiskey and questions and things like that. But that's just a little bit about how we're operating at Ardnamurchan, and trying to do it the right way while still making great whiskey. I think let's do Dram 2 because I've been talking. I
just want to quickly comment on it because
yeah, sure.
Lovely nose, very soft, very approachable. I mean, I could put it on the screen before, and $78 retail, like it's very reasonably priced. So love that. Nice balance of bourbon, sherry, a little touch of peat in there as well too, moderate amount of peat. But it's got that nice fruity, funky vibe that I love about Ardnamurchan, like a little bit of that cheesiness and fruits coming through. Harmony, any thoughts on the first one? 2 thumbs up. You are, by the way, you do have powers to unmute yourself now. I fixed that, so it's fixed. Quickly before we move on.
Yeah, sure. I was just going there.
Kevin's got a question that he would like. His only question tonight, if he only had one answered, what is the naming convention of the whiskeys?
With regards to the codes. So you'll be happy to know that is fading into history, shall we say. So we basically it's batch code. So it's date and batch. We heard basically we genuinely take feedback on board, and what we were trying to do was to establish transparency and just say like, hey, look, this was distilled at this point. We're trying to give you more information, but we understand that it kind of came off as kind of muddled and confusing on the front of the label. So we did away with it. So actually in future batches, and this is just as things trickle through with supply, it will just be, let's see if this works. Is that going to focus? So it's just AD going forward. I'm not sure which ones you have currently, but this will be how the label looks. Is that the question you have? What does AD stand for? I'm seeing that. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up on the chat as well. It's just Ardnamurchan Distillery. It kind of works AD both for Adelphi and Ardnamurchan, but yeah, just Ardnamurchan Distillery. Did that answer the question? Yeah.
Sorry, Carl, part of it too, I think was because you used to have the dates on there too. And I think people were often curious what the dates were. And then it would cause frustrations with our staff because, which totally makes sense. The importer would reuse the SKU, but the description on the bottle would change. And then people would be like, are these the same thing? And they do it for
Sure.
a perfectly good reason. Every time you register a new product in Alberta, you have to pay $75. Nobody wants to
Yeah.
do that, especially if it's
Yeah.
like a small quantity. So it would always be like, what is this? But I guess part of it too is that you're getting to a point where you're probably starting to think like, all right, what's our core range going to be as opposed to like one-offs?
Yeah, I think that's partly true. Yeah. I mean, I think mostly we just want to make like life difficult for Marlene and for Onyx. So that was the main goal there.
And
But
by web managers.
right, and that too. No, jokes aside, I think Connell, my boss, our sales director, Connell, he puts it well too. When you're putting together a new distillery and as such, what you hope is going to be your new core expression, it's not as easy as one might think to replicate that. So it also provides a little bit of look, batch variety, in my opinion, personally, is a good thing within reason, but it also gives you a little bit of leeway to say, okay, this was this batch. If our second batch has a different batch on it, and people understand that while we're aiming for the same basic end product, there could be differences. It's just trying to make that clear. And again, we understand perhaps it did the opposite and sort of obfuscated things. But that was the goal. But you're right also that we're getting to a size and a maturity of our distillery that I think that was always intended to be our core. There was always that recipe in mind of this is what we want to make as the Ardnamurchan flagship, if you will.
Mhm.
But we are now at a point where we can simply put AD, this is our base whiskey, our base single malt. Let's roll with it.
Yep, that's cool. One more question just to quickly touch on, and then I think we should jump into the second whiskey.
Sure.
The question came in here was, are you considered Highlands or Islands? I know the answer to this, but I'll let you roll with that, Carl.
Cool. So we are Highlands. Technically, Ardnamurchan is a peninsula and is on the mainland. So while we are surrounded by a whole lot of water and farther from most of the mainland than many islands, we are distinctly Highlands. And then secondly, as per the Scotch Whisky Association, the islands is if, and I think
No, you're right. You're right. It's
Yeah.
not a region.
It's not technically a region.
I classify it on our website as a region because it's kind of stupid that it's not. But
I agree.
But the Scotch Whisky Association is kind of stupid in its own right, so I don't really worry too much about that.
Yeah, fair. Yeah. First and foremost would be that we are technically not an island, and that would be answer A.
That's a great. So I think we could have mic dropped it at that point with that answer. We're a peninsula.
We might as well go down the rabbit hole. Why not?
We're all about that at Kensington Wine Market. We love rabbit holes.
Cool. Should we do Dren too? Are we any other questions that I'm missing?
We'll catch them. Let's keep rolling.
Cool, yeah. And I appreciate those that are saying they're enjoying it and all that. Cool. So let's dive into two, and I'm going to dive into two because I don't get to have this all that often either. So I'm going to have a wee drop too. So Dren number 2 is again Ardnamurchan distillate. This is our Madeira cask release from I believe October of last year. So 1022 Madeira at 58.2%. So this is cask strength Ardnamurchan whiskey. And crucially, and why it's Dren number 2, and I should have said, I am taking you all on a bit of, I mentioned this to Andrew and Harmony, the palate ride is going to be a bit of a roller coaster. So bear with me. There is logic to it. But we are launching into a cask strength Madeira finished whiskey now, but this is fully unpeated Ardnamurchan whiskey finished in Madeira casks. So I think the main talking point here is, for one, the fact that we produce both unpeated and peated distillate gives us that flexibility to do fun things with however we see fit, really. And then secondly, with our core, we very much the vast majority of what we age, and because it is the composition of our core, is bourbon and sherry, but we do still like to have fun with other casks. So obviously we have had and have Madeira casks. There are several other casks that we have. We do a very limited champagne barrique finish. For those of you that are wine nerds, I understand it's technically Chardonnay, not champagne, but we can get into that. But we have some really amazing casks from a Grand Cru champagne house called Paul Lenoir. We have mezcal, we have port, we have other things that I'm forgetting because it's after 1 a.m. But all sorts of different casks in the warehouse that we like to toy with, check in on, and see how they're going. There's your Paul Lenoir. So yeah, just because we do trend towards bourbon and sherry, it works well for our distillate, doesn't mean we don't do lots of fun releases with other things. So like a little mouth party. Yeah, I agree.
So Madeira, for those who don't know, fortified wine, quite spicy, and sometimes it has a nice sweetness to it too. What I love about this though is that you've still got that like cheesy note coming through. The Madeira is not so powerful that it's kind of scrubbed out that Ardnamurchan, like the malt, that funkiness, and the fruit's still shining through it too.
It's great to hear. As you can imagine, that's paramount for us. Distillate is incredibly important. That's not to say that I don't love drinking sherry bombs. Put one in front of me, let's get after it. But I do think, ideally, if you can have really evident cask character and it still have it taste like Ardnamurchan, that's the win for us, right? That's what we want. Seems like flinty or ashy, I'm seeing from Will Christie. I mean, yeah, sure. I think, yeah, I mean, Andrew said it well. Madeira does have that spicy, sure, flinty, ashy. I mean, the beauty of what we do here is that it's all subjective, right? We get to have fun with it and taste what you taste. But yeah, I completely hear that. I like that a lot, actually.
Here's a question for you. And again, apologies if you don't know the answer.
No, far away.
Wine casks are something that I think a lot of distilleries do poorly. And I think they do them poorly because they're often wet fills. And so you're getting actual wine in the whiskey. Do you guys have an approach for how you do this at Ardnamurchan, or do you know?
Great question. We do. The start of the approach is that we don't mess around with red wine. It's not our bag and it's dangerous. So that is not to say I think most of us at least have had some extraordinary red wine finished or red wine matured Scotch whiskeys for sure. It just can go really fast in a direction that perhaps we wouldn't have intended. In terms of the white wine, so the Paul Lenoir in particular, that's just the only thing I can say to that is that it's just special from a relationship perspective. And it happens to make an extraordinarily tasty whiskey. So we invite the Lenoirs to do the blending for that every year. So that was driven by people and driven by most of us loving all sorts of beverages, including champagne. And we also are just tremendously happy with what their casks do to our whiskey. We, not as a rule, but largely will stick to fortified wines more so than wines in terms of, the track record that we've had with how it handles our spirit. That's my best answer, I think.
Gotcha. Cool. All right, Harmony, do you want to share any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I was going to type them, but yes, I really love the nose on this. It's kind of like jammy. And just very approachable. The palate for me, I get like spices and honey and kind of like chewy dried fruits. They haven't quite raisined. There's still some juiciness in there. And then I get like a salted smoked marshmallow it brings me back to a cooking thing I did in Mexico where we slow cooked brownies and I salted it and they forced me to put marshmallows on it. I took them off, but I ate the marshmallow and it had like coarse salt on it. And so it was like a smoky, salty marshmallow, which I'm kind of getting there. And then I just love that peppery fruit that comes back around on the finish. And yeah, it does still have that feeling of a lightly peated whiskey, although it's not, which is cool.
Mhm.
Cool. So I'm gonna go. Harmony's got this. I'll see you guys later. That was brilliant. No, I totally agree. I mean, it has that lush, rich fruit thing that you might expect from Madeira, but there is a lot more going on, right? It's a real treat, and we are hoping to do this again soon. I think that's what I can say comfortably. I don't know when, genuinely, I don't know when, but I know we have Cask and we're hoping to get some more Madeira finish on the market. So
Cool. All right.
cool. Drum free.
Yeah.
I don't have this one, so you guys enjoy it because we're on Cask strength, correct? Just want to make sure I'm not launching. Cool. We're doing a new batch of this in the next, let's say, 4 to 6 weeks. And excited about that. It's one of our consistent batch releases. So this is Ardnamurchan Cask strength. This is September 2022, which makes this 58.4% alcohol, again, Cask strength. I think maybe a really important point here would be this is not the core, the amped up core expression. So this is a fundamental, maybe not fundamentally, but this is a tweak on the recipe. So it is much more peat driven. It's about 94% peated distillate.
Oh,
So
yeah.
so if it tastes peatier, that's intentional. We want it to have a bit more of that kick. And then in line with that, and to let that distillate really shine, it's about 88% bourbon maturation, as opposed to 65, 66 for the core. So, we want that peated distillate to shine through. We want it to shine through at Cask strength. For me personally, this is a really cool representation of what we can achieve with these different distillates, because this is reasonably naked, right? This is, we are young as a distillery, and so therefore this is young, and this is predominantly bourbon matured, Cask strength, peated Ardnamurchan, and that's the beauty of it, in my opinion. I think I've always gotten this really cool, like, preserved lemon, salted lemon thing on this, that mixes with the smoke really, really nicely. And I think on certain days, this is a tough whiskey to beat for me in terms of the Ardnamurchans that we've put out. It can really do a treat, especially, and it's a nice cool night in Edinburgh. So I'm actually jealous that you all have Cask in front of you, but I'll make do with my little touch of Madeira here.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I know a lot of us are probably used to saying like, oh, that's some good coastal peat or Isla peat, but I'm going to say this is perfectly peaty peninsula on the nose.
Alliterative, I like that.
And it's beautiful. I wish I had more. I'm having sushi after this tasting. I feel like this would just go perfectly with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sadly, it's all sold out. We gotta wait for the next batch.
Getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're working on it. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, we'll talk about the joys of not having, I mean, it's a good problem. It's the better problem than the alternative, but not having enough whiskey of those that people want is a reality sometimes. And Cask strength, we're fortunate, has gone pretty well for us, commercially and just in terms of people enjoying the flavor. So we do, it does tend to run out. We do try to stay on top of it and put out another, pretty chunky sized release whenever possible. But yeah.
I know you're new as a distillery, so a lot of what you're doing, I imagine, is somewhat experimental and just feeling the vibes of how you're received and what you can do, just individually. But as you move on, are your cask strength expressions going to be somewhat like similar? Are you going to be striving to do high peat, more ex bourbon, less sherry? Or is it kind of going to just be more experimental and whatever you like as it comes out?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're inclined to keep cask strength as a release, you know, in roughly the shape that you see it. For that reason, like, it has done well. People seem to enjoy it. If they don't, we're happy to hear about it. In fact, we appreciate, you know, people that say, it's really not for me, it's too peaty, it's a brash, whatever it is, that's helpful for us.
Yeah.
I think I would probably answer by saying, as we get older, and we are fortunate that we had Adelphi as a parent, and we have a really good team of investors on our board. We never had to do gin, right? So not that that's a bad thing in any way, shape, or form, but I love gin, and I love the gins that Scottish distilleries that are making both are putting out. But in terms of stock, it means that every drop that came off our stills was going into barrel to make whiskey, right? And so I think rather than changing cask strength, I'm not saying we won't. I mean, that it could happen next year, it could happen in 10 years, I have no idea. But I think we're more likely to just add other fun things, would be my answer. And actually, you're shortly going to taste a good example of that. So that was a good foreshadowing, I suppose.
Yeah, no, because I love it, and it would be great if I could have a similar expression in the future, seeing as this is sold out. So
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, cask strength will continue to be a thing. As far as I'm aware, you know, on I guess it's September 30th where I am, but yeah, at the end of September, there are no plans to discontinue cask strength. And as I said, we just blended a new one, so
yeah.
it's just going through the logistics.
And I know a lot of us on the call can agree that there's something extra about a cask strength that we just can't get enough of, like the oils, the mouthfeel, the finish, being able to play around with it, and just that kind of naked expression is.
Yeah,
I
well,
like it.
couldn't agree more, honestly. And that's not to say, you know, I think there's some amazing whiskey bottled at 46%. There's even some good whiskey bottled at 43 and 40. But by and large, yeah, cask strength is as how we trend. And that's, you know, that's also where we came from, right? Adelphi is 98% cask strength bottlings, whether it's single cask or otherwise. So it would be, you know, we'd be going against what's worked for us for 30 years now with Adelphi, and not acknowledging that cask strength whiskey is pretty darn tasty.
Mhm. All right, should we move on to sherry?
Let's do it.
This isn't here yet, so I'm borrowing a retailer in the UK's photo and screen for a moment, so
Cool.
everybody can see it. Because that's one thing, Carl. I mean, unless you have the bottles, it's kind of hard to find the products on your website. It's like you need the blockchain or something to.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning the blockchain, because I need to talk about that, and this is probably a good opportunity. But you're absolutely right, and we're working on updating our website now. It's one of the 912 projects on the docket. But yeah, you're absolutely right. We need to make some changes, but yeah, I'll talk about the whiskey, and then I'll touch on the blockchain thing, the QR code thing, because I mentioned transparency and kind of that's how our approach to tastings and just interacting with everyone that likes to drink whiskey. But we're drinking a sherry cask release, so we're excited about this. This is a brand new product. Yeah, it's basically, we hadn't released sherry focused Ardnamurchan, and we were like, well, let's do that perhaps, and that's it. So this is we bottled at 50% for this release. as with anything we do, and just to make it clear, that was completely driven by quality and by tasting. So we tasted at 50, we tasted at cask strength, and we tasted at, I think, 55. This decision was made before I joined, but we do this for pretty much anything that we taste, and for a new release is just try it at different strengths. And we really liked it at 50, actually more than the higher proofs. I will be completely upfront and say that also means there's a couple extra bottles to get around the world, which is where this was sent. So that is a second benefit, right? You get a few more bottles when you cut the strength a bit. So if it tastes good at 50, it's certainly not a bad thing, would be the way that I would put that. So this is, again, partially peated. The exact split is probably 55% unpeated, roughly, but there's different size casks, and that's math. So I'm going to pass, but it's about 55-45, give or take. And
Carl, I think someone in your country once said and got in a lot of trouble that math is hard. So we can all acknowledge it's a little bit hard.
Well done. Well done. Yeah, no, I'm that's not a strength of mine. So I try not to do it when I don't have to. I'm a obstination. And I think the important part about this release, obviously we're thrilled with the color. As I said, this is always natural color, so that's pretty decent for 5-year-old whiskey. Pretty thrilled with that. And that is the case because this is not a sherry finish. So this is a full sherry maturation whiskey. So every drop was in sherry barrels, predominantly Oloroso, some PX, and again, different cask sizes for the entire time that we spent in barrel. So just a fun, different take on our spirit.
Cool. It's interesting. I find the nose on this one doesn't it's a little bit shy, but the palate on it is lovely. Nice layers of chocolate, dried fruit, spices, creeping into a little bit of the leather and tobacco, but that little bit of PX is adding some nice sweetness too.
Yeah. And I said I was going to mention it, but I am conscious we have to get to the Adelphis. But fortunately, the Adelphis are they're just delicious. I don't have to talk as much about those. They are what they are. But just for those of you on the call, I'll see if I can get this to focus. If you aren't familiar, we have this QR code. Come on now. Yeah, it's decent. You've seen it. We have that on every bottle that we make at Ardnamurchan. And that QR code, it does two things. So effectively, we have to report everything we make to HMRC, to the tax man in the UK, effectively, in terms of production. So we now do it digitally through use of blockchain. The nice thing about that is that it also creates an incorruptible ledger of everything that we've done in the process, and it has a consumer facing element. So if you scan, particularly on our core, which is larger batch, not only will that QR code pull up a screen that tells you your bottle number, the yeast varietal, the barley varietal, the person who bottled it that batch. It will also, if you click on maturation on that page, it goes to a separate PDF that has every single cask that is in that batch. It has the cask number, it has the cask age, it has whether it was a hogshead, an American standard barrel, a butt, you name it. So all of the information is there. And this is, I don't want to get too far into this for interest of time, but we are young, and that is one reason why we don't have an age statement yet. I also think that if you really want an age statement, you can go into that as deep as you want. Conversely, you can just not and have a dram and not scan the QR code, and that's great too, right? We're happy with people enjoying whiskey however they do, but the information is there. So that's not to say that we won't at one point or another incorporate an age statement into some or all of our whiskeys, but for now, we're giving you the information if you want it. At no point are we trying to hide whether it's 5 or 6 or 4 or 8. That's not how we operate. We're just concerned about what the product in the bottle tastes like predominantly. So there's a little spiel there on the QR code and on age statements, but that's us. We're liking this very. Sorry, I should be reading more.
Don't worry, we'll catch up on this as we go.
Good.
So yeah, Marlene just gave me, I can spitball the price here for everybody if you give me a second. This is on the way, not quite here yet. But give me a minute and I'll do some math for everyone.
Thank you.
I have a question. About the bottle design.
Yes.
I like the new bottles, but I loved the old bottles with that little window with the little dial up of.
Okay.
Yeah,
These are not whiskeys.
What's that?
The non-whiskey bottles. Yeah.
Yeah, because they were pre-whiskey. They were under
Yeah.
3 years of age.
But I love them, and I was wondering if they will ever come back or in some limited series form. They're cool.
There is a version. It's not quite very nice. Will Christie's got one just hanging out there behind his chair. I appreciate that, but it's not quite the same as the AD Spirit. But all of our single cask bottlings are very comparable. So they're in a similar opaque bottle. And that the color of that bottle, this sort of slate blue, gray blue, is to mimic the rocks on the peninsula. The Ardnamurchan is effectively like a giant extinct volcano. So it's volcanic rock. So it's a bit of another homage to where our distillery is. But all of those single cask bottles have the same hydrometer window. And for the record, the reason that we did that is that most of our team has worked in hospitality and has had to do an inventory at a bar at 3:30 in the morning. And then you come across a fully opaque bottle and you don't know how much whiskey's in there, and it's infuriating. So that is part of why there is that little glass window, so you can see the level on the bottle.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know where they're coming from. So
Yeah, been there, done that.
yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Should I go into Adelphi? How am I just dragging us hopelessly behind? How are we doing?
No, we're great. Let's go on to Adelphi.
Cool. I just saw your comments in 91, 92. That's really cool, actually. That's nice to see. Okay. So I'll give a very quick backstory, and then this is quite an exciting dram. So I'll try to stop talking. I tend to be verbose. But
Can you sorry guys, I'll be right back, Harmony.
So as I mentioned, Adelphi is turning 30 this year. And we have been effectively doing, the history goes back to the early 19th century. There was an Adelphi distillery in Glasgow. If you're a history and a whiskey nerd, you can send me a message and I'll sort you out with all the backstory from 1826 and beyond. But importantly, we've been doing predominantly cask strength single cask bottlings since 1993. And that is the parent of Ardnamurchan. So our managing director, Alex Bruce, was brought on nearly 20 years ago, which is wild. And Marlene, I know, has known him for quite a while. So he's nearly 20 years into Adelphi. And in about 2008, he went to the board and he was kind of, we'll give him credit as being fairly prescient and noticing kind of what we're all dealing with now, which is pretty serious run on demand for whiskey. And so supply drying up for independent bottling. And that was sort of the process by which Ardnamurchan was formed as an idea, as a distillery for us to have our own spirit. So Alex, as such, has some pretty cool relationships, has been in the industry for quite a while. And what you are drinking now, Dram 5, and this is a serious credit to Andrew and the Kensington team, this is a 7-year-old Chichibu. So this is a cask strength 57.8% Adelphi bottling of Chichibu. So Chichibu, I would say one of the most sought after Japanese whiskeys on the market at this point. It's owned and operated by a man named Ichiro Kuto. He opened in 2008, I believe. So for context, that's 3 years after Kilchoman. So new-ish, but on the old side of new, maybe we'll say. And he just makes incredible, qualitatively driven whiskey northwest of Tokyo in Japan. We actually, a cool tidbit, we do one of our fusion whiskeys, which is where we get to blend malt whiskey with malt whiskey from another country. So we've done it with Sweden, we've done it with Australia, we've done it with India. There's one, and it's named after a famous Scotsman who did something historical in countries. So we have one called the Glover. The first batch, we just actually bottled the 6th batch of the Glover, but the first batch, look at that, yeah, there's your Chichibu, it's glorious. And I do actually have a drop of this, which I'm excited about. The first batch of Glover, this is for the real whiskey nerds, was actually had Hanyu distillate in it. So Adelphi bottled whiskey from the Chichibu predecessor, which was started by Ichiro's grandfather, I believe. And then the subsequent Glover bottlings have all been Chichibu distillate. So this is just glorious. I know they do tremendously long, like roughly double your industry standard in terms of fermentation times. They do all sorts of different barrels. It's a lightly peated, typically a lightly peated bottling, although I think they vary on that as well. But a real treat for Andrew to incorporate into the tasting. So,
well, I mean, whiskeys like this, when they're so rare, the idea that they just go to 1 or 2 collectors or lucky people who pull the trigger first when they pop up online doesn't always seem fair. So I like to drink them. And having been to Chichibu twice, I kind of, I've got a soft spot for the distillery. We used to get it, like we used to be the only store in Canada that would get it, and then we didn't get any anymore. Like it's just the demand globally for it far outstrips the supply. And I know even like when those releases hit, like they do the London bottlings and things for the whiskey shows, they sell out in hours, and then they're 3 or 4 times the price at auction. So
yeah. This is awesome. It is so fruity and tropical. I'm like I said in the tasting, I said jubes, and now I'm getting like pineapple and mango, and it's fantastic.
It has a remarkable vibrancy to it. It's one of those things, as soon as it hits your tongue, there's no like, there's nothing dark or mysterious. It's just bright and zippy and almost effervescent, not literally, but it has that like bubbly vibrancy. And you're absolutely, I completely agree on the fruit. Just, big bright nectar fruits, apricot, pineapple for sure. It's just a beautiful dram.
Yeah. It's lots of complexity for a 7-year-old, but to be fair, the climate just outside Tokyo where this is made is a little warmer than Scotland, so it's not a fair comparison to say 7 to 7. But the other thing that's so cool about this distillery is Ichiro believes that the fermentation, and this is something I believe is not sort of prioritized enough at many other distilleries, and his washbacks are actually Mizunara Japanese oak, which is incredibly expensive, but also it preserves bacteria and things in it you can't clean out of it that are going to contribute to that ongoing evolution of the spirit and to the fermentation. And so it's a funny, tiny little distillery. I know he's building a bigger one, or he has built a bigger one, but it's just, I mean, you walk around it in slippers. You have to take your shoes off and you walk around in slippers. Like it's in some ways so Japanese, but producing a lovely spirit.
Thank you, Andrew, for selecting this for the tasting. It's been a very long time since I've had a Chichibu. So
yeah. Well,
And
for
this
many,
is
this is probably their
fantastic.
first time. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the cool thing about these things is, yeah, it's nice to sell them, but it's also nice to put them in a tasting and share them with people. So,
Well, I only was able to taste it because I sold a few bottles to a gentleman who allowed me to open it uh and take a pour and drink it out of a
not at
corn
Kensington
cup.
Wine. So,
So
Customer and a half right there.
yeah.
it was in Harmony's before times, her before Kensington Wine Market times.
Yeah, we don't talk about the where, it's just the before.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Pineapple upside down cake. I like that. That's good.
I mean, one of the things, and I don't know if you see this as much over there, but sadly, Canada is awash in what I like to call Japanese-ish whiskeys, in that they're spirit that's been sent to Japan. And if you're lucky, it spent some of its time maturing there, but more often than not, it's just bottled or blended, bottled, and then sent off as Japanese whiskey. And I mean, the actual bona fide Japanese whiskeys are still so hard to come by, at least in our country. Like, we don't have the access that places like London do. It's really frustrating.
Yeah, it's certainly not easy here, but I dare say we do have it a little bit easier. But yeah, it's difficult. I mean, combine accessibility and price point, it becomes a frustrating proposition for some of the really proper Japanese whiskeys. But I guess that's demand right now, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, cool. Well, that was a treat. But stylistically, we'll move on to a couple of whiskeys that I think are similar in some ways and extraordinarily different in others. So this is kind of a fun one. And this gets into this may arguably the wheelhouse of some of the Adelphi bottlings historically. So your sixth dram, I don't have this one myself, but this is Breath of the Highlands from 2009. So this is a 12-year Highland whiskey. This is first fill sherry, and 55.2, right about that? I think that's right. So the breath of the Angels series is effectively our opportunity to put a silly little drunk angel on a label, but also this is for when a distillery would prefer that we do not name who the distillery is on the label. So this is a Highland. Which unnamed distillery is this? If we were, I'll be frank, Jeff. If we were in person, I would probably be loose enough to say this out loud, but we're on a recorded live stream, so I'm not going to say it.
In the chat.
Yeah.
That's okay. Some mysteries are best left mysteries, and
Yeah,
we can speculate.
We can address that after the fact, perhaps. Feel free to send me a message and we'll see how we go about that. But I don't want to get in trouble. But yeah, it's a really beautiful. I had a little dram of this at the office, knowing that you were going to pour it. But I would say you guys probably are now getting to properly nose it and experience it. So I might defer. But first fill sherry 55%, just a nice, delicious sherry dram. Any thoughts or observations on this?
Harmony, dive in if you're ready.
Well, I was reading the tasting notes and I got kind of thrown off because two of the first three descriptions I've never heard of, but
Are they like British sweets, like Scottish sweets, probably?
probably, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the one tasting note you guys did for our Glen Borodale. It was like Mrs. McGill Cuddy's fudge. And I'm like, well, she sounds nice.
Yeah, lovely
but
woman.
I don't know what that is. Yeah, no, it smells like a cocktail.
Okay. Like a Manhattan or something, or what?
Yeah, exactly.
Rob Roy
Manhattan,
kind
of
of thing.
course, with the sherry, with the vermouth in there.
Cool.
But lots
Cool.
of fruit. I do get the bitters note on there. I haven't tasted it yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got the palate's like very approachable, some nice soft sherry tones. I mean, Ardnamurchan always, or not Ardnamurchan, Adelphi always does really well with sherry. The casks that you guys have been using are generally like top notch. So we're not getting any like off notes. There's no sulfur. It's not very tannic. It's just chocolatey Christmas cake, nice spices, moving into like leather, like, and soft licorice, like that soft Aussie licorice.
Yeah. Yeah. On the taste that I had, that was that like kind of behind the sort of more apparent classic sherry tones was that cool, like earthy, loamy, leathery thing that I really like on a proper, like, you know, fairly deep in flavor sherry matured whiskey. I like it when it gets into that sort of savory, earthy thing. So yeah, leather was there for me as well.
Yeah, Andrew, you nailed it. As I'm just like trying to figure it out for myself, I was just like taken on a journey, eating chocolates, and then like kind of leaning over a leather ottoman, and then that licorice eucalyptus kind of feeling on the finish. It was great. It's beautiful.
Yeah, lovely.
That's a really nice dram, actually.
That's really nice.
And it's got a
Decent long finish too.
yeah, it's nice and soft. It's got a kind of the mouthfeel and the finish of something older. Like it doesn't taste like some 12-year-olds, especially in sherry, can be really rough and really raw, but there's a nice balance to it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree for sure. It's good here. I'm glad it's holding up over there too. Nice. Looks like we're okay in questions. I guess we'll do dram 7. So geographically reasonably close to that distillery. That'll be my hint. But it's not really a hint because that's like half of the distilleries in Scotland. So we'll let that go.
Did you say though that other distillery shared a water source? Is that
yeah. I think we can comfortably say that.
Yeah, I mean it's a big mountain.
Yeah.
But I know exactly which distillery you're referring to, and I won't blurt it out.
Yeah.
We're on video.
Say it starts with Glen and shares a water source, or no?
I think we're getting too specific.
Yeah, I can neither confirm nor deny on that. But this whiskey is indeed a Benrinnes, and quite a wild one. This I hadn't tried this before, because this was before my time when this was bottled and released. But this is 09 14-year-old Benrinnes, and this is kind of blowing my mind. That is a refill cask with that color. So that is quite an active cask. 54.6% again, cask strength. I think the good tidbit about Benrinnes, in my mind at least, is I alluded to sort of access getting harder and harder for independent bottlers, which I don't think is going to change over the next few years with the way demand is. So the beast of Dufftown, Mortlach, was always something that people tried to get their hands on and do a bottling of, and it's really getting harder and harder to get. However, there are a couple of distilleries that have at least a comparable weightiness to their distillate. One I would say is Dalyuen, which we also try to get access to, because I personally am a huge fan of Dalyuen distillate, but I know it's really, really nice in the casks that we've had for Adelphi. The other would be Benrinnes. It has a richness and a meatiness that I think holds up to really active casks really well, and gives some versatility from the perspective of the bottler. I don't know if you would agree, Andrew. I know you've tasted your fair share.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's like Benrinnes. I've never had a bad Benrinnes from Adelphi. In fact, you've had a couple of like really good casks, which I think are from the same parcel as this. But from a lot of other independent bottlers, I really struggle with Benrinnes. I find that often it's just not balanced. It's too malty. It's like it needs a lot of time to hit its stride. But I mean, this drinks really nicely. the nose on it, you're getting a lot of sherry. And as you said, this is sort of shocking for first fill or second fill, refill sherry, that you're getting that much color and sherry profile from it. But this is in that same style as Mort, like not quite as meaty, but it's in that sort of vein.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. I kind of anticipated it to be a heavier mouthfeel than what I'm getting right now, but I think that comes with time. But I love the richness in the honey and the chocolate, and there's a little bit of cinnamon. Like cinnamon and chocolate really come through for me on this, and there's a little bit of like a nutty note and just lots of toffee. It's like a dessert dram.
For sure. Yeah, and that's why it's the penultimate dram, let's be honest. It's a really big sherried whiskey. I've got like a Dr. Pepper thing that's working for me.
Yeah, that was my first thought on the nose, and then I was like, is that rude that I'm smelling so hard on here?
No. You already mentioned it. We probably should do fewer Scottish specific references on our official tasting notes, but we also intentionally trend a bit absurd on what we put in text for Adelphi. So it is what it is. If you want to say Dr. Pepper, we're not going to stop you.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing. However, it might be difficult for someone to people who beat themselves up for not finding the same notes as the label. I know that I hear that all the time, and I just say, well, don't worry about that. What do you think? Or at the very least, are you enjoying it? But what gets me is like, ever since I saw that Glen Borrowdale label, I'm like, I need to get to Scotland and I need to try this fudge because it sounds epic, because I really liked the whiskey. So it's like, and now I need to get over there and try the fudge. So I don't think it's a bad thing.
We'll certainly encourage you visiting Scotland. That's we'd be very happy for you to get over here and show you the distillery and all that. So
yeah,
thanks for everyone on the call. I mean, we, as remote as it is, the ethos of the team is, if you make the effort to get to Ardnamurchan, we try to make sure you have a good time. And that's pretty much how we, especially for trade folk, people that we work with on a daily basis. But it's just as true for people that just appreciate our whiskey. I mean, we appreciate that, and genuinely we'll drive. I mean, our team drives to the distillery regularly just to make sure that someone who likes our whiskey and is in touch with us, gets to have a little bit of a special experience if we can swing it. So it's important to us that people that come visit get to enjoy it and see what a special place it is. So
for sure. All right, we've got one last whiskey to go through, the Caol Ila, and then we're going to do what we call the speed round, which is going back through just to see how things have changed in the glass. So we're on to the Caol Ila 2010.
Yeah, so we bottle a fair bit of Caol Ila. I'm very happy about that, because Caol Ila is glorious in my opinion, and I would say most of our team feels that way. So this 12 years, 57.4 and refill sherry. And I think the talking point on Caol Ila is more than one person in our company would say that Caol Ila is maybe the most consistent distillate in all of Scotland. They make just delicious stuff, and the cool thing about it, because of the peat profile and because it's just so consistently at such a high level, you can put that whiskey in tired third fill bourbon cask or a dripping first fill sherry cask, and it's going to be splendid. I don't have this particular Caol Ila bottle myself, so I hope you guys are enjoying it. It sounds great. That sounds like something I want. But I mean, I'm privileged to have had quite a few Caol Ila Adelphis even in my short tenure, and it's just delicious. It just tends to be tremendous. And that's what I have on that. I mean, if we have an opportunity to buy Caol Ila, we're unlikely to pass it up. We'll put it that way.
Well, and it's been a whiskey that I think we've seen some ups and downs on pricing in the last few years because supply has been up and down, with Diageo turning off, then turning back on, then turning off the taps again for it.
Yeah.
But I love the salami reference in this because I think that's bang on.
Yeah.
Caol Ila's usually got either like that bacon note or a scallop note, or if you're lucky, you get both. But in this case, it is definitely leaning more towards the scallop or the salami side of things.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, it's great. Undoubtedly Caol Ila for sure. Yeah, I had to look up what that Savlon cream was, and I was like, oh, is it like a cheese or a spread? It's like, oh, it's the antiseptic cream for burns and cuts. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, of course. What a natural tasting note.
But I
Sounds
mean,
like-
it's true. Like a lot of Caol Ila to me takes me back to like my old hospital days where I went and would get IVs monthly, and I would tease them like when they put the IV in my arm and flush it with saline, I'd be like, ah, that's Isla. Can you put a margarita in the other side? And they'd look at me like I was crazy. But it often does, like, you know, band-aids and medicinal things are a part of that profile at Caol Ila. So
Yeah, I think generally with the nice thing about Caol Ila is you get those funky tasting notes like that, but it's not the whole whiskey, right?
No.
And there's so much
Definitely.
more, and I think that's the fun part, is you've got logically very tasty things, you know, salami and bacon and scallops, and then antiseptic cream, and somehow that makes sense. So that's that's a good thing.
Yeah. All right, speed rounds. I know we're on the verge of losing some people, and we do a poll. I'm gonna check. Hopefully, oh, Evan did not create a poll for tonight's tasting, so that's no fun. And I don't have permission to do it because he set up the anyway. No worries. We will ask you your favorites in a moment, but before we do that, we'd like to go back through the range, see how they've changed, see how your perception of them has changed over the course of the tasting. So we're back to that flagship AD single malt from Ardnamurchan.
Right after a 12-year cask strength Caol Ila.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's standing up fairly well. It's kind of doughy, vanilla. It's like going into one of those tourist fudge shops, which they have in Scotland and in Banff and in Alberta and all probably at Niagara Falls. It's just like fudgy.
That works for me.
I'm getting
That's one thing we're always, sorry, go ahead, Harmony.
I was gonna say fudgy, sure, but I'm getting a little bit more of like those sweeter sugar candy notes for myself.
The palate's more like Play-Doh with a little bit of the saltwater taffy thrown in for good measure.
Nice.
Or like a homemade Play-Doh. Yeah.
Homemade Play-Doh. Now you're getting the trick of the Adelphi tasting notes. We're getting somewhere here. This is good.
There's well, Kevin's asked a question about Dumpy. We'll get back to that in a minute. Ardnamurchan Madeira. This was a surprise.
I really liked this
standout
one.
for me.
Surprise standout, did you say? Yeah.
Madeira I find is very hit or miss.
Yes.
A lot of Madeira finishes and maturations, I think they're allowing too much of the wine to stay in the cask when they put the whiskey in, and it sort of spoils it.
Yeah.
It's very clean, very spicy. There's a nice sweetness underlying it. I love the way the smoke plays with it.
Yeah. I know this is a speed round, and forgive me if I forgot. Is this just like a short finish in Madeira, or is this like a maturation?
No, it is a finish. It's not full maturation, but it is about
Okay, fair enough.
it's at least 16 months. It's probably 18 to 20
Okay.
from
Yeah, I
memory.
don't typically like Madeira, but that's was really shining for me in this tasting.
Yeah, this touches on what I was saying about we're careful with wine, even fortified wine, which we have better luck with. I mean, we're keeping a close eye on how it's affecting the distillate.
Do you STR any of your wine casks?
We do not.
Okay.
Not currently.
All right. Cask strength, just trying to keep Carmi, we'll squeeze more questions in as we go. Are you back onto the cask strength?
I'm on the cask strength.
Okay.
I haven't drank it all because I'm gonna save it for my sushi.
Okay. I just so younger whiskey when it's peated, peat seems to hide flaws and make younger whiskeys more drinkable. And what's incredible to me about this cask strength whiskey is it's young and it's only faintly peated, yet the palate on it is just, it's really approachable, really soft, really fruity. It kind of shows the quality of the base level spirit when you pull everything else back from it.
That's cool to hear. I appreciate that. I mean, anytime there's accolades for the spirit, you know, you've done something all right, right? That's it's glorious to work with people that provide amazing wood and amazing barrels, but that's the part that we can control, is making something off the still that has character and depth. And our production team is ridiculous. I mean, they do an unbelievable job. I mean, we won't get into it because it's, you know, it's well past an hour, but it's really good to hear that. So thank you, Andrew.
Harmony, any thoughts before we move on to sherry?
No,
No? Okay. Thoughts on sherry?
sherry is nice. This is just beautiful. I could nose this very empty glass for a long time if it would let me. I didn't get a full pour of sherry, perhaps. I'm very much looking forward to the sherry landing, Marlene.
Sherry's nice. I mean, I think it to be honest, the Madeira and the cask strength are so good that it sort of, and I think the sherry sort of is such a dominant wood style that it's good. I just don't like it as much as the Madeira or the cask strength. I mean, to me, I have to say though, like for me, that's probably true to form for most whiskeys. Like I like the spirit to be able to shine through as much as possible. And I love that esterification of the spirit that happens with oxidation, and sherry kind of masks some of those more subtle edges. It's good. There's no flaws. I like it, but not my favorite. So
that's cool. Yeah.
Well, and for me, it's kind of the similar opposite. I don't often like sherry casks. So to enjoy this is exciting for me.
Harmony, don't ever agree with me just to agree with me. I like that you have
I
your own.
disagree with you.
That's
The
the way to
sherry is
go.
excellent.
Yeah.
It's I know we're on speed round. I'll just quickly add, it's interesting to hear those two takes, because that is a pretty good representation of the feedback we've gotten. We've had a lot of people say, I don't trend sherry and I really like this. And we've had other people say, I have no problem with this. Lighting me on fire. And it's interesting. I'd say generally it's positive. Like, we're happy. That's fine. You know, we'd rather people tell us that. And if you buy a different whiskey from us, cool. As long as it's not from someone else, that's fine. Yeah, like this is our first, it's a brand new release, right? There's only so many ways you can get that information. So we appreciate hearing that. It's nice to get those different opinions.
Yeah. All right, I'm on to the Chichibu. Still fun. It's nostalgic. Feel like I'm wandering through the distillery in slippers and then going to the one liquor store in the town of Chichibu, or I guess city, that might actually have a bottle kicking around. Yeah,
that's the case of that visit. Soon enough.
Harmony, any?
My Chichibu is empty. It was fantastic. Speed round.
Okay, yep, speed round. All right, what about the Highlands? Breath of the Highlands.
That was very good. It's very good. It surprised me. It shouldn't have, because I like a lot of the breath of releases from Adelphi, but I often don't know what I'm getting into, and just knowing that the following was Benrinnes and I tried them both side by side, I'm enjoying the Highland more.
I think the Highland is undervalued partly because it's not declared. And I mean, this direct fired whiskey is quite tasty.
Well, and that's what I like about it, is it's like doing a blind tasting in a way. So, you know, as Carl was talking about his opinion and receptions to Benrinnes is this big, chewy kind of spoon. This is kind of thin.
Mhm.
And it's because I looked at the name, I was expecting that same thing. So for me to come in and go, oh, this is thin after having this secret Highland, I enjoy that. I like not knowing what it is and enjoying it versus knowing what it is and having that expectation set here.
I mean, we can't say this, but you might be able to see the distillery name behind me somewhere. I'll just leave it there. All right, let's go on to the Benrinnes. You already talked about the Benrinnes. It's good. I mean, any Benrinnes that I actually like is a good Benrinnes. It's a 50-50 toss up for me, but I've yet to have a bad one from Adelphi. So there was one a couple years back that was really sherried, I think from the same parcel that people were losing their mind over. So like trying to buy them all and we're like, no, you can have one. Yeah, it's a nice balling. I still think I like the Brother of the Highlands better though.
Cool. That's cool.
Don't agree with me just to agree with me, Andrew.
I'm gonna kissing your butt right now, Harmony, because why not?
All right. Caol Ila.
Lastly, Caol Ila.
Fantastic.
Always a treat, Caol Ila. Always a treat.
So Carl, here's a little nugget you can use. Dave Broom is allegedly the first person to suggest that Caol Ila was the most consistently good whiskey in Scotland. Many other people have said it. I've said it. Other people have said it. But as far as I know, Dave Broom was the first person to suggest that.
No, I'll give Dave that credit. That's fair. I mean, he probably deserves it. So
I wouldn't go that far, but I mean, just that's what my understanding is, that he was the first person. So
noted.
Yeah, but it's lovely, nice smoke, very salty, very maritime, starting to go seaweedy. I didn't chime in when you and Harmony were chatting, but for me, that antiseptic note, there's a little bit of it here, but the one big one for me is Laphroaig. It's Dettol, and the question is it going to be clean Dettol? Is it the mop bucket before you mop the floors or after you mop the floors? They're two very different styles. So,
I get that on the cap strength that they put out. I get I'm like 50-50 on those releases. I'm either really, really into it or it's just not quite for me.
Well, it's like the Carchus. I feel the same way about the Carchus. The Carchus, I think, are quite hit and miss.
Yeah.
Anyway, favorites. We don't have a poll for you tonight. But if you want to throw your favorites in the chat, you've got two. Maybe list them 1, 2 there. Vincent's already ahead of everybody.
Chichibu wins.
Fire it in there. Harmony, while we're doing that, why don't you tell us your favorites tonight?
Oh, dang it. I hate choosing a favorite because I have a mindset about favorites. But Chichibu, I was so excited. I was telling everybody, I'm leaving my girlie. I'm going to have Chichibu. It's been so long. And then it was fantastic and better than I. And then the Cask strength, I think, is second.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Carl, you've probably tried most of these at some point. If you had to pick two favorites, what would your two favorites be?
Well, two favorites would be Cask strength and Chichibu.
Cool. All right. I'm going Cask strength and Madeira. I love the Chichibu, but like
it's obvious. We love it.
For how long, for how young the Ardnamurchan bottlings are, I think they punch above their age in terms of quality. And I mean, there's a lot of new distilleries that are on the market, and most of them are good. But few of them, to my taste, have kind of showed the maturity and complexity of Ardnamurchan at a young age. So, yeah, it's definitely, of the distilleries that have opened since 2010, it's definitely in my top 5, because I think you guys nailed it in terms of how you approach whiskey making. Your cask management is good, clearly. Yeah, I can't wait to see this thing evolve. I did this once with Aaron, and then a second time with Kilholman, watching them from the very beginning to where they get. And I'm excited to see where Ardnamurchan goes because, oh, and then Ben Romick. How can I forget Ben Romick? Ben Romick
How could you?
and Kilholman. Watching all three of those spirits kind of mature has been like awesome through my career. And yeah, I can't wait to see Ardnamurchan in 10 years time and see what like a 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old Ardnamurchan looks like.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I've purchased every Ardnamurchan since you've come out, and I have none left to show for it. I enjoyed them all.
Good. Good.
So
It's for
thank you
drinking.
so much, Carl. This was excellent.
And
No, go ahead.
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say thank you, and those are very kind words. I mean, same sentence as Kilholman, Aaron, and Ben Romick is a place we're fun being. So it's been a really a ton of fun, and thanks to everyone who attended and tasted along with us as well. It's been a real pleasure.
Really quickly before I do my thank yous and we let everybody go, we will send a ballot email out for the Chichibu. Please keep in mind there's just one bottle, and don't try to butter me up. It doesn't work. If anything, it actually has the
I
opposite.
tried to butter you up in a
I am-
private chat.
If people have tried to butter me up on ballots in the past, and it makes me, I'll actually remove you before I do the balloting. So just it's a random chance. Just go with it, accept fate. And if it doesn't work out, I mean, there's going to be some cool new Ardnamurchans coming. And there was a question about a KWM cask. We are looking at a cask. So possibly in the next, let's just be realistic, 8 to 12 months, you might see something for that. So stay tuned. We would love to bottle one. Interestingly, Carl, I have one last question before we do the thank yous and whatnot. Ardnamurchan. Are we going to be able to get any here in Canada? Will there be another release?
We have the cask, and we are entertaining the prospect of refilling it.
Oh man, you should totally refill it.
Yeah, I guess that betrays that it is not currently filled with spirit, so it could be a while for a fresh pickle batch. However, of the bottles of the infamous batch that are in the wild, I think they're fairly few. So yeah, let's talk, but I don't know how we can get you Ardnamurchan, but I love that that's how we're closing.
Well, I mean, it can't be the only cask like that in the warehouse. There's got to be another. Not that I want a whole cask of it. I would just like to have some bottles of it at some point in time. But
so when I find Ardnamurchan 2.0, that'll be the Kensington Wine Market single cask.
Well, maybe partial. Like
that's what I heard right there.
Like a tenth of a cask, perhaps. Regardless, Carl, I really appreciate you tuning in on a Friday night, staying up late with us. Thank you very much for that. I want to thank Marlene and Onyx Beverage for their support as always. Harmony, thanks for being on tonight. Everybody, thank you for taking part in tonight's tasting. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great weekend, and we'll do another one of these again soon. So have a good night.
Thank you, everyone. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Carl.
Thanks, Harmony. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Marlene. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Marlene. Bye.